Hello and welcome back to SEMA's podcast. Y'all ready for this? Where we talk about all things emergency preparedness to help you and your family get ready for any type of natural or man-made disaster right here in Chatham County. This week, we are joined again by the powerhouse, the American Red Cross, and the wonderful Bob Sheldon. Bob, thanks for being here.
You're welcome. Hello, everybody.
He is thrilled, believe it or not. He's thrilled to be here, very excited. And we are going to be talking about something a little bit different today. We're going to be talking about what happens after a disaster when it comes to mass feeding. And we'll break down what that means and why it's important for us to have a conversation about it now. In addition to Bob, we have Seth Sawyer, SEMA's lead planner here, who heads up our mass feeding task force. Seth, thanks for joining today.
You bet.
So Seth, like I said, is the lead of the mass feeding task force. So this is kind of his pun completely intended bread and butter. So he is going to help guide us through some of these questions and keep the conversation flowing. So for the purposes of our conversation today and of this entire episode, let's pretend and knock on every piece of wood that I have in my office, but let's pretend that there is a hurricane that's impacted Chatham County. We have homes that have been destroyed or damaged in some capacity, and we are now re-entering back into Chatham County during phase 4. Now, the Red Cross has a shelter open. We're not talking about sheltering today. If you want to know more about sheltering, go back and listen to all three of us like last time in episode 22, where we're talking about sheltering. But we are going to say in this episode, shelters are open. We're in phase 4 of reentry, which means everybody's coming back in that lives in the community. And we know that feeding is going to be absolutely necessary because power's out and we've got some potential destruction in our community. So let's get started, Bob, with his first question. How is food prepared by the American Red Cross, and how in the world do you decide what to make for people that have experienced disaster?
Well, we use several different ways. We use partners a lot. A lot of our food may come from large caterers that we set up a contract with. Could be in the area, could be outside the area. We use partners like the Southern Baptists. They may bring in one of their portable kitchens and cook for us, and then we distribute. We use the Salvation Army, where they may cook for us and us distribute, or they may cook and distribute themselves under a cross plan with us in the area. Some areas that it's real bad, very quickly, we may distribute MREs or meals ready to eat, which need no cooking to get food out. We also, in some cases, will give out food boxes, which if people have power, but the infrastructure is down in some cases, we would distribute food that they could cook at their own place. But all our food is maintained and handled by people that are qualified with the health departments, and all of our caterers and all of our partners are all qualified for food safety. And how do we decide what to feed? In reality, we feed what can be cooked in large groups, in large masses. We don't have a extended, you're not going to get lobster and steak. You will get a certain amount of calories per day. We will cook, everybody gets the same. If we know of people that are special food groups, we will try to, say in a shelter, we will try to accommodate them. That is a little harder when we're distributing food out into the neighborhood, but our food, our meal, let me put it that way, would have something that I think everybody could eat. It will have vegetables. If you happen to be a non-meat eater, it will have protein. It will have some kind of dessert. It may be Oreos or something like that, but there'll be, and we try to include some kind of bread or roll. So we try to give you, even if you are you don't eat one particular thing, we give you enough to eat on the other. And if you come to one of our locations and you say, I'm a vegan or I'm a non-meat eater, can I just have the vegetables? Yeah, we'll load you up with the vegetables and go from there. Most of our food is, and I will tell you, it will be bland because we don't put a lot of spices in our food because of people that can't deal with spices. You will get a little pack that'll have salt and pepper and that kind of stuff. So you can do your own, but we can't cook food with a lot of salt because there are a lot of people that can't use salt. So we're trying to cover everybody that we can, as well as being able to get it out in an efficient matter of cooking it in large quantities. That's how we decide what you're going to eat.
I like it. So make sure, listeners, bring your salt, bring your pepper, bring your Mrs. Dash. It might need it. That's what Bob's saying.
Your Tabasco sauce, that works too.
I like it.
So Bob, how does the Red Cross deliver food to the community?
Well, there'll be a lot of different ways. If we have a shelter open, we will provide food in the shelter. It may be that people around the area can come to the shelter, even if they're staying in their house, can come to the shelter and eat a meal. We may have an eating location set up near one of our kitchens where we are cooking, where people in the neighborhood could come and either pick up a boxed meal or eat at that location. When we are out in the, when there's a large disaster and we are out in the area, we will use what's called our ERVs, or emergency response vehicles. And everybody's probably seen those on news shots. They look a lot like an ambulance, but they will drive down the roads and stop at houses, or if people walk out and serve a meal there, we serve a meal out of the vehicles. We may have locations that, say, a faith-based group may come and get a large amount of meals from us to take back into their church or something if they're running well, I mean, basically, we will distribute meals any way that we need to distribute them to get them out to the people. We've done it by helicopter, we've done it by motorcycle, we've done it by boat. So basically, any way that we need to get a meal to the people, we'll use whatever we need to.
Cool.
I love that you just said helicopter, boat, and motorcycle. That's pretty incredible. So how do you determine where the need is and where you guys ultimately need to take your food delivery services?
And a lot of that will be done in conjunction with whatever, like your group, the local EMAs. It could be done with local fire departments or police. We look at an area as damage, how the area has been impacted, whether their infrastructure is down, whether they have power, whether they have grocery stores open, whether they have restaurants open. And we go to the areas that would be, I guess, the greatest need. We will, it may take us a little bit to get all of our equipment in, especially on something like a hurricane. And I will say that we do feed in things other than hurricanes. I mean, we do a tornado or a evacuation or something like that. It's not, we don't always have to have a hurricane to pull this stuff out. It would just be on a smaller scale. But we would go into the areas that, now, if an area is totally destroyed and nobody has a house, we probably will not go into that area. But if we have areas that houses have been damaged and people are working on them or staying in them, then we'll drive down the streets and try to get them a meal. We always, like I said, we always will serve in our shelters. We normally will serve at our kitchen locations, depending on how safe that is for people to get to us. So basically it is based on need. I mean, it's based on who has the greatest need, who has no ability to prepare their own meal or get their own meal or even pay for their own meal, even though that's, your socioeconomic group doesn't really matter to us. We feed everybody. So most of it is based on need and the damage of the area. If you're in an area that's got restaurants and power and food, then you don't need us as much as the people that don't. So that's how it is a constantly changing area. We will go from one area to another, or we will stop in one as the power comes back and move to another. So it changes during the whole disaster as to where we are.
So Bob, on a typical disaster operation, how often are your food vehicles in the community? Is it like a breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or is it only certain times?
Well, again, that will depend on the damage. It will also depend on how quickly we have been able to get our material there. Hurricane, where we've had some time planning, normally we will be there a little quicker. Or something like a tornado comes through, maybe take us a while to get some equipment there. We very rarely will do breakfast because of the amount of time it takes us to prepare meals and distribute them. That's usually just, and also personnel, it's usually just not able for us to do. We will try our best to get 2 times a day into an area, lunch and dinner. That lunch may run anywhere from, say, 10:30 in the morning till 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and dinner may run anywhere from 4 o'clock in the afternoon till 7 o'clock at night. Now, when I say that, that's the whole area. If we are on your street, say we're on Seth Sawyer's house at Oak Street, and we come by there today for lunch at 11:30, and we come by for dinner at 6 o'clock, we're going to do our best to come by at that time every day so that give or take 15 minutes, so that that you don't have to wait there from 10:30 in the morning until 2 o'clock in the afternoon to not miss lunch or from whatever. So we will time our meals and our routes so that we try to come through a particular spot in the area pretty much the same time every day. Now, there may be disasters that are so big and so crushing on our resources that we come by and we give you 1 hot meal a day and an MRE, meals ready to eat, so that you have 2 meals a day. One of them is not going to be hot. We try to give 2 hot meals a day if we can, but in large disasters, lunch may be a sandwich, and then sides with that. It just really depends on how many people that we're having to supply and how much material resources we have in the area. As the disaster goes along, we'll get better. Our partners will start sending stuff in. We'll start sending stuff in. So hopefully the 1 meal a day or the meal in an MRE, it won't last too long, and then we'll be into two hot meals. A lot of it is going to depend on what the disaster is, and it changes with every one. I mean, I can't give you a set answer of exactly what we'd be able to do on every disaster. I can give you a hope that I can give you 2 hot meals a day. I'm not going to say that I can guarantee that.
Yeah, that makes sense. It depends on the size and the scope of the disaster. Listeners, I know that you've heard that a million times at this point, and we're only 30 some podcasts in, but it very well depends on the size and the scope of the disaster. All right, so Bob, let's talk about how you guys pay for these meals. I mean, that's a lot of money that you guys are going to be shelling out. If someone that wasn't affected by the disaster has an interest in helping, is that something that you guys can, handle?
Yeah, we can, normally we're buying in large groups. We're buying from companies that we have set up as partners in ahead of time. Cisco happens to be one. They handle all the restaurants, but during a disaster, they'll come in and supply our kitchens. So we buy in very large quantities. I mean, a hurricane, we may spend a couple of $1 million on food, or less. I mean, or more. The way people can help is the best way they can help is just to donate money to us. All of our money in the Red Cross is donated by the American people. We get no government money, so it's not like the government's going to write us a check before a hurricane and say, here, spend this on steak and lobsters, like I said. But so we pull it out of our, I mean, all of that comes out of our national headquarters, and people can donate either locally at their chapters, or the best thing for them to do would be to donate through 1-800-Red Cross. That's our standard line that stays open all year long, help and donations. But that's the way it is. Most of it is well, all the money is donated. The way we pay for it is we have accounts with whoever we're using with, and we just run it and then pay them, with a giant credit card. So.
I imagine just a giant, like the big checks that you have at the president.
Yeah.
It's just like a giant credit card.
It's not like Publishers Clearinghouse, but it's almost that big.
Almost that big. Got it.
Almost that big.
So Bob, speaking about donations, if a church or someone wants to bring you some pre-cooked meals, or any other faith-based organization wants to bring you those meals, could the American Red Cross accept and distribute those?
No, we are bound by the laws and regulations of the health departments, national and local. So we can only really accept food from people that are qualified with a health department inspection. Now, if a church has a Wednesday night spaghetti supper or Friday night fish dinner that they do all the time, and they are qualified by the health department, local health department, they may be able to cook for us. In that case, I would highly recommend them contact the local Red Cross chapter or the job itself to find out exactly what we need. One of our provisions in the Red Cross is everybody is treated the same. Everybody gets the same. Doesn't matter if you're Bill Gates or somebody that lives on the street. You're still going to get the same services. So when a individual or a church or something comes in and brings us 50 meals, it's hard for us to work those into our schedule with everything else, because they may bring in, I don't know, something in particular, and we're serving something else. So for us to serve those 50 meals out kind of goes against our principles and our rules. But we may be able to work out with them on something in a smaller area, like a shelter or something like that, to where there was a limited number of people that we were doing. But again, they need to work through their local chapter or the job, or they can contact a group like y'all's, who would then know where we are and could contact us to work with us on what they were going to provide. But other than that, all of our food has to come from health inspected kitchens, you put it that way.
So Bob, who helps distribute the food, and can people join your team? And would it be better for them to join now, or should they wait for a disaster to occur?
Well, of course, I'm always going to say it'd be better for them to join now because we can use them to do other things. But we use a lot of our people come in. If we are using an ERV, we have a two-man crew or two-woman crew come in to run that vehicle for whatever their length of time is. But at the same time, we also can use local volunteers. We could use them as what we call the third seat, because in a lot of cases, it does us a good job to have somebody local on the ERV, because a lot of times in a hurricane, there's no street signs. So we're just kind of wandering around. And if we have somebody that knows where the locations are, that works. They could join as either a Red Cross volunteer if they want to join now and get some training, or we do accept during large disasters, we will accept what we call spontaneous volunteers, which would be people that come in and work with us for a couple of days or something like that. Something in the now, I will say that it will be because of our partner kitchens. Normally, we don't take people to come in and say they want to cook because somebody else is running that. But a lot of people can come in and serve. They can either serve at our locations or serve on our trucks or help us distribute food, snacks and water, that type of thing. But we can use them as spontaneous volunteers. It's a little easier for us to use our trained people because they know what our acronyms are and what we're talking about and how we're going to act. And usually they have more time if they've committed to the Red Cross. It is tough for us to take somebody that says, I have half a day to come in and put them on a food truck, because that truck may be running all afternoon. But that does not mean that we're not going to take spontaneous volunteers. We will give them a very quick training program to make sure they're doing right and they're using the PPE that we use, or the personal, like gloves when we serve, and then we will use them. And we're always glad for people to volunteer.
Awesome. All right. So Bob, kind of a wrap-up question. Is there anything else that you want to talk about when it comes to mass feeding or disaster work that Red Cross does immediately after an incident occurs?
You have 2 or 3 days on what we do. I mean, basically we do a lot. Well, we've talked about shelters. We've talked about feeding. We have a group that will run with the what we call I will say bulk distribution, but I think we've changed our name now to delivery of emergency supplies. But it's basically things like tarps and rakes and water and stuff like that we will run through the neighborhoods that people get. Our ERV drivers, our food vendors, they work as the eyes and ears for us because they are on the streets. They know what people need, and they will come back and report to our what we call caseworkers, which are people that work with clients after the fact to maybe help them with things in their houses or find out where they're at. We have logistics people that, they warehouse all this stuff and they keep it for us. And that's a good area for local volunteers to come in if they just want to come in and work a couple of days. We're always shifting stuff around. Other than that, I mean, it's basically, we are a giant corporation that comes in, starts up in one day and goes for 3 weeks and then goes away, hopefully 3 weeks, but we'll be there as long as people need us. The feeding may hopefully will end sooner than the rest of the job, because if it does, that means the power's come back on, the infrastructure is back, people can get to the grocery store, they can start taking care of themselves, and they don't need us. and they don't have to carry around that little bottle of Tabasco sauce, they can use it at home. But there's a lot to do. There's a lot of different versions. I will make the pitch that if anybody is interested in joining the Red Cross, give us a call. We can explain all of it. We have a whole bunch of different things that people can do. It's not all, a lot of it is behind the scenes. Feeding and sheltering are two of the areas that you are actually in the disaster. You're talking to the people. It is somewhat stressful from time to time, but there's a lot of backroom jobs too that need to get done and then support those two groups. So give us a call if you want to volunteer, and we'll see about giving you some training and stuff. Other than that, I'm sure somewhere you and Seth are going to want another podcast. So we'll save another division for that. Let me put it that way.
I love it. It's like a little teaser, Bob. You could do my job. I love it. But you're right. I mean, I have personally seen a Red Cross disaster response operation, and it is incredible. I mean, the amount of people that just kind of swarm together that are all like-minded and want to be able to just truly help people is pretty incredible. And I've really enjoyed watching Red Cross come in and do exactly what they do, disperse all the food, all the bulk distribution items that you had talked about. It's pretty awesome to look at. So thank you so much for joining us today, Bob. I'm sure, like you said, we're going to have you back because you are a resident expert on all things Red Cross, even if you're from a remote destination today.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate y'all doing this, because if we get the word out, it helps more people if they know what's happening beforehand. And again, we won't have any hurricanes come through Chatham County.
Yes. Knocking on all of the wood. Perfect.
Everything seems to be going up through the Gulf this year, so we'll let them keep on with that.
Yeah, I'm not mad about it. I'm sorry if anybody's listening from the Gulf Coast, but we're not mad about the fact that the hurricanes are heading out that way and not coming towards Chatham County.
Right.
But all right, well, thank you guys so much for joining us today. Listeners, be sure to tune in next week when we have a very similar conversation with another powerhouse nonprofit, the Salvation Army. So be sure to tune in. We can compare and contrast. We can talk about how these different organizations work together and how they each have their own mission of what they're trying to accomplish. Until then, listeners, see you guys. Bye.
Bye.